I found proof that my best friend and my husband thought they were clever enough to betray me. But instead of confronting them, I smiled, stayed quiet, and made them believe they had won. They never saw the trap I was building around them, or how I would make them destroy each other with their own lies. By the time they realized the truth, all they could do was watch me walk away with everything they thought they had stolen. Hello, I'm glad you're here. This means a lot to us. If you enjoy the stories we share, kindly subscribe to this channel and help us reach our first 100 subscribers. It would be great if you can also comment on which city you are watching from. We might just give you a shout out in our next story. Today, our special shout out goes to Sarah Newman from Ohio. We are glad you enjoy our stories. Now let's dive into the details of today's story. I found it on a Wednesday, a day so ordinary it almost made the discovery crueler. It was buried under a crumpled fast food bag in the passenger seat of his car, the glint of a tiny white shopping bag catching my eye as I leaned in to grab my scarf. At first, it didn't register. Just another receipt, another errand he'd forgotten to mention. But when I unfolded it, something about the neatness of the ink, the tenderness of the description, froze me. One sterling silver bracelet, custom engraving. To my always. I blinked down at it, the air flattening around me. The world didn't explode or tilt, or collapse the way you think it might in a moment like that. It simply narrowed. My vision tunneled. My mind cutting through possibilities with surgical coldness, until it landed squarely on the one that made my hands start to tremble. The name on the receipt wasn't mine. It was hers. Mara. My best friend since college. My maid of honor. The woman who cried into my lap the night her fiancé left her, who whispered once drunkenly, "You're the luckiest woman in the world, you know that?" I sat there for a long time, the car door still hanging open, the cold spring air biting into my skin. Somewhere across the parking lot, a mother wrangled her toddler into a stroller. A man fumbled with his groceries. Life kept happening, loud and oblivious, while mine stuttered to a halt. I tucked the receipt back into the bag and placed it neatly where I'd found it.
No confrontación.
No screaming match in the driveway. Not yet. I drove home on autopilot, my hands light on the wheel, as if I were afraid any sudden movement might shatter me. He was already there, grilling steaks in the backyard, waving casually when he saw me pull up. I smiled back, automatic and brittle. I wondered how many times he'd waved to me like that, carrying her fingerprints somewhere on his skin. Inside, I set the table, poured wine, laughed at the stupid story he told about a client mishap at work. I kissed him goodnight later, feeling the thud of his heart against mine, wondering if he could tell that I had stopped existing about 4 hours earlier. There is a moment when you realize betrayal isn't an explosion, it's a slow bleeding out. It's a tiny, sharp wound you pretend you don't notice until one day, you look down and realize you're standing in a pool of your own loss. That night, lying in our bed, his hand absently curling around my hip the way it always did, I stared at the ceiling and decided I would not confront him. Not now. Not ever in the way he expected. If he and Mara thought they were clever, thought they could steal the life I had built without consequence, then they had forgotten one very important thing about me. I never waged wars I wasn't sure I would win. And by the time they realized the ground under them was shifting, it would already be too late. I closed my eyes. I smiled. I began to plan. The first thing I killed was my need to be understood. The second was the version of me that would have begged for an explanation. I moved through the days like smoke, untouchable, ungraspable. He didn't notice at first. They never do. Men like him, women like her. They survive on attention the way sharks need water. As long as you keep smiling, keep laughing at the right places, keep asking how their day went, they believe everything is exactly the way they want it to be. And I was a very good actress. I stopped arguing when he came home late. I stopped asking who he was texting under the dinner table. I stopped being curious about the small, slippery lies that coated our life like oil. Instead, I gave him what he craved most, the illusion that he had gotten away with it. Meanwhile, in the quiet corners of our life, I was building something he couldn't see, a version of myself he would never be able to reach again. Every morning, after he left for work, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a pen, old-fashioned, deliberate. I wrote down everything, times, dates, strange conversations, the way Mara's name slipped too easily into his stories. as if she were the seasoning he couldn't stop adding to every meal. I found the spare phone he thought he'd hidden in the garage. Its passcode was our wedding date, the kind of cruel, lazy arrogance that made my stomach twist. I didn't smash it against the wall. I didn't confront him with it flashing in my hand. I simply took pictures of everything. The texts, the late-night calls, the photos they thought were secret. I wasn't gathering ammunition for a courtroom battle or some tabloid explosion. No, this was something more private, more sacred. I was archiving the exact moment they stopped deserving the version of me they had known. One afternoon, Mara called me, voice bright and too high, asking if I wanted to get brunch like the old days. I smiled into the phone. I'd love that. I miss you. I could hear the relief in her breath. Guilt had made her greedy for my forgiveness, and it made me sick in a way that didn't show on the surface. We sat at our favorite cafe, the one with the tiny white tables and bad coffee, that we used to swear was part of the charm. She wore a new bracelet on her wrist, thin silver, shining, and fiddled with it nervously while she pretended to listen to my stories about work, about life. I wondered if she knew, somewhere in the back of her mind, that her betrayal was written all over her. In the way she couldn't meet my eyes. In the way her laughter came half a second too late. Before we parted, she hugged me tighter than usual, whispering, "You're like my sister, you know that?" I squeezed back just as hard, my voice steady. "I know." She pulled away first, guilt splashing bright across her face. I let her go without a flicker of anger. Because real revenge isn't about rage. It's about patience. By the time they feel the knife, it's already buried so deep they'll never pull it out without tearing themselves apart. That night, I watched my husband from across the dinner table, pretending to be absorbed in some article on my phone. He laughed at a meme he showed me, and for a moment he looked so young, so stupidly happy that I almost pitied him. Almost. Instead, I smiled at him. I reached out and brushed my fingers against his wrist, casual, familiar. He smiled back, relieved, believing the lie I let him live in. I wondered if Mara wore the bracelet when she was with him, if he traced the engraving with his fingers while lying in another bed. In another life he thought he was smart enough to keep hidden. It didn't matter. Soon he would find out exactly how wrong he was. I didn't need to shout. I didn't need to cry. I just needed to keep vanishing, until the only thing he could hold on to was the echo of the woman he thought he'd outgrown. And the ruins of the life he destroyed to chase something that had never been real. They say you can't walk into the same river twice. But I wasn't walking back into anything. I was wading into their fantasy, barefoot, smiling, letting them believe the water was still and safe. I started small. Invitations to dinner parties. Casual brunches. A birthday card for Mara, signed with a flourish and a kiss. I tagged her in old photos on social media, shared memories, played the part of the loyal, oblivious friend. I laughed at her jokes, listened to her plans for future girls' trips, even helped her pick out outfits for weekends I knew she was spending with him. I made myself essential again, weaving into their lives so seamlessly they forgot to be suspicious. Mara was the easier mark. She needed my forgiveness like oxygen. She needed me to believe she was still good, still worthy, still my sister. Every kindness I offered her was a drop of water to a dying woman crawling through the desert. He was more cautious. He'd always been a worrier under all that arrogance. I saw the way he watched me sometimes, too sharply, too long. But each time I met his gaze with open affection, with unflinching normalcy, he relaxed. The guilt settled back into the hollow space between his ribs, where he thought it couldn't touch him. They thought they had gotten away with it. And that's what made them reckless. It was Mara's idea to throw the party, an early anniversary surprise for us. She said, a way to celebrate everything you and Caleb have built together. I told her I was touched, that I was honored. I hugged her tight, feeling the tremor in her hands where they pressed against my back. When I pulled away, I smiled warmly. Let's make it perfect, I said. And we did. I helped her plan every detail. The guest list, the playlist, the catering. I pretended not to notice the flicker of panic when she asked if she should invite Caleb's coworkers, if she should reach out to friends we hadn't seen in years. I nodded along, all wide-eyed gratitude. I trust you, I said. You know me better than anyone. She swallowed hard. She smiled anyway. We chose the venue together. A small, cozy hall downtown, strung up with fairy lights and worn wood floors. The kind of place that would look beautiful and effortless, just like the life they thought they had stolen from me. The night of the party, I wore the red dress Caleb had once told me was too much. It fit tighter now, leaner, sharper. Like me. I did my hair the way he used to like it. I painted on the soft, familiar smile he used to chase. I became the ghost of the woman he remembered. The woman he had betrayed. When I walked into the hall, I felt the air shift. Heads turned. Conversations stalled. Mara rushed to my side, her face bright and flushed. "You look incredible," she gushed, clutching my hands like a drowning woman. I kissed her cheek. "So do you." Caleb stood a few feet away, watching, drink forgotten in his hand. His mouth opened slightly, then shut again. I could almost see the memory hit him. The life he had thrown away for the cheap, stolen thrill of her. The party pulsed around us, full of laughter and music and clinking glasses. I floated through it, weaving between old friends, co-workers, strangers. All of them thinking this was just another celebration of a love story. Only a few knew better. The ones who had seen the cracks. The ones who had always whispered, too low for anyone to hear. I made sure to thank Mara publicly during the toast. I made sure to say, I couldn't have asked for a better friend. I raised my glass to her, and the whole room followed. I watched her eyes shine with something brittle and frantic. I watched Caleb glance at her, then at me, panic flickering just beneath the surface. They could feel it even if they didn't know what it was yet. The walls inching closer. The trap ceiling shut. I smiled at them both as if I hadn't already set the match to the bridge we were standing on. Later, after the speeches and the dancing, after enough champagne had softened everyone's edges, I pulled Mara aside. "I want to show you something," I whispered. She blinked at me, wide-eyed, tipsy. Of course. I led her to the small side room I had reserved, the one draped in white linen and candles, private and perfect. I closed the door behind us. I reached into my purse and pulled out the small velvet box I'd hidden there all night. Her face lit up, confusion and delight warring in her features. "A gift?" She laughed breathlessly. I handed it to her, steady as stone. "For you. For everything you've done for me." She opened it with trembling fingers. Inside was a bracelet. Sterling silver. The engraving read simply, "To my always." Exactly like the one she already wore. Exactly like the one I wasn't supposed to know about. Her face crumpled so fast, so violently, that for a moment I thought she might collapse. Tears sprang to her eyes, raw and desperate. I don't," she stammered. I tilted my head, studying her. "Something wrong." She shook her head violently, the way a child does when caught in a lie too big for her mouth. In the distance, through the thin door, I heard Caleb calling her name, looking for her. I smiled. "Go to him," I said softly. "He's waiting." She fled without another word, bracelet clutched in her shaking hands. I stood alone in the soft candlelight, feeling nothing but a clean, pure silence settle inside me. Phase 1 was complete. They just didn't know it yet. Mara didn't come back to the party. Neither did Caleb. People noticed. Of course they did. In a room that small, absence is louder than any argument. I caught the first ripple of unease move through the crowd, the whispered questions, the sideways glances. A few friends tried to smooth it over with too bright laughter and refilled glasses, but it was useless. The air had shifted, soured. Even the music sounded wrong, a little desperate, a little off-key. I stayed exactly where I was, smiling, sipping my champagne, thanking guests for coming. I let the cracks widen, let the questions fester. Somewhere outside, Mara was probably crying. Caleb was probably swearing. Maybe they were blaming each other already. Maybe they both finally understood the real cost of what they had done. I didn't need to watch it happen. I could feel it, humming under my skin like a second heartbeat. An hour later I made my exit, graceful, polite, untouchable. People pressed their hands to mine, murmured how beautiful the night had been. I thanked them with a soft, tired smile, as if I hadn't just lit the match that would burn my marriage, my friendships, my whole carefully constructed life to the ground. Outside, the night was sharp and clean. I walked to my car slowly, the way you move when you're savoring something. When I slid into the driver's seat, I caught sight of Caleb's car parked half a block away. He and Mara were inside, faces turned away from each other, locked in the kind of argument that leaves wounds you can't take back. Even from here I could see the tight set of her jaw, the furious, desperate way she gestured. He sat stiffly, arms crossed, his face twisted in something between guilt and rage. I didn't need to hear the words to know what they were saying. I didn't need to know which of them would break first. They had broken themselves the moment they decided my loyalty, my love, was something disposable. I drove away without looking back. The unraveling happened fast after that. A mutual friend, one of those well-meaning types who love to traffic in whispers, texted me 3 days later. "Are you okay? I heard about Caleb and Mara." I typed back a simple, perfect answer. "I'm fine. Thanks for asking." I wasn't going to feed the fire with my own words. They would burn just fine on their own. By the end of the week, the story had spread through every brittle little corner of our social circle. Not because I told it, because they did sloppily, defensively, desperately. Friends who used to clink glasses with them now crossed the street to avoid their shame. Family members who had once adored Mara sent cold, clipped messages about how disappointed they were. Even at work, Caleb's easy charm soured. His boss didn't say anything outright, but I heard through the grapevine that promotions quietly slid past him like ships in the night. People who betray others always think the fallout will be private. They forget that betrayal, once exposed, smells like blood. And people, even the ones who pretend not to, are drawn to blood. One night, about 2 weeks after the party, I heard a knock at the door. I knew it would be him. I let him knock 5 times before I opened it. Caleb stood there, rumpled and gray-faced, holding nothing but his car keys in one hand like he wasn't sure if he meant to stay or flee. "Can we talk?" he asked, voice raw. I leaned against the door frame, keeping the barrier between us. "I don't think there's anything left to say," I replied quietly. He looked like he might cry, and the old version of me, the one he had murdered in slow, casual strokes, might have softened, but I wasn't her anymore. "She lied to me," he said suddenly, desperately. "She said you didn't care anymore. That you were gone." I stared at him for a long, still moment, and then I said the truest thing I had ever said to him. "I was." He flinched like I had slapped him. "She's not you," he whispered. "She's not even close." I tilted my head, studying the man I had once loved, once trusted with the softest parts of myself, and I realized he was right. Mara wasn't me. Neither was he. I closed the door gently but firmly, leaving him standing there in the cold, holding nothing but the pieces of the life he had smashed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply turned off the porch light. He wasn't my problem anymore. Neither of them were. The silence after the storm wasn't empty. It was full. Full of myself, for the first time in years. I didn't rush to fill it. I didn't throw myself into some frantic reinvention, the way people expect women to after betrayal. I didn't chop off my hair, or tattoo a phoenix across my ribs. I didn't need to prove anything. Not to them. Not to anyone. Some mornings I woke up disoriented, as if my body was still waiting for his hand to reach across the bed, for the familiar thud of his steps in the hallway. But then I'd stretch, feel the cool, clean sheets around me, and remember. He was gone. They both were. And the space they left wasn't a wound anymore. It was a doorway. I changed little things first. Swapped out the dishes she had helped me pick. Repainted the living room walls that he had insisted should be neutral, because bold colors are risky. Bought the kind of wild, vivid paintings that burst like firecrackers across my walls. I wore the red dress again, not for anyone else this time, but just to see the way it clung to me, sharp and alive. And when people asked, because they always ask when gossip gives way to polite concern, I smiled the way a woman smiles when she's carrying a secret too precious to share. I said I was fine. I said I was better. Both were true. Mara tried once to reach out, about a month after it all collapsed. A message so long it barely fit on the screen, full of apologies that tasted like spoiled milk. Full of explanations, as if there could be enough words in the world to stitch back together what she had ripped apart. I didn't reply. Some silences are answers. Caleb didn't try again. I think he understood in the marrow of him that I had walked somewhere he could never follow. From what I heard in fragments, friends' whispers, muted posts online, their relationship didn't survive. Of course it didn't. Built on theft, stitched together with lies, it rotted from the inside out. He cheated on her too, when the thrill of their secret became just another dull weight. She left town after that, moved somewhere colder. I imagined her walking through gray, frozen streets, clutching her coat around her, wondering when exactly it all slipped through her fingers. But I didn't waste much thought on them. I was busy living. There were nights I sat on the back porch barefoot, sipping wine and letting the stars blur overhead, feeling the fierce, bone-deep rightness of being alone. Not lonely. Alone. There's a difference. I had burned the old life to the ground, but what rose from the ashes wasn't some sad, trembling survivor. It was a woman who knew exactly what she was worth, and exactly who she would never hand herself over to again. Sometimes, the greatest revenge isn't destruction. It's survival. It's joy. It's building a life so beautiful, so untouchable, that it eclipses every small, broken thing they ever tried to take from you. And that's what I did. I built something they could never enter. I became someone they could never reach. And that was enough. That was everything. If this story gripped you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. More raw, real stories coming your way every day. Thanks for listening. See you soon in our next one.